Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tome of Silver, the show where I randomly select a game from my collection, review it, and add it to an ever-growing ranking list. The last time we looked at a Sonic game here on the Tome of Silver, we looked at Sonic Mania, a game that, while objectively spectacular, I personally couldn't get into. Classic Sonic was never my thing, so the callbacks and return to classic gameplay never resonated with me. Rather, it had always been Sonic's 3D entries that I grew up with and feel the most nostalgia for. One of the earliest Sonic games I'd ever owned was Sonic Adventure DX, a Gamecube port of Sonic Adventure on the Sega Dreamcast. Though not Sonic's first official jump into 3D, we have a few other titles that take credit for that. Sonic Adventure marked Sonic's first full-fledged, adventure outside a 2D plane. Sonic Adventure was originally released for the Sega Dreamcast in 1998. However, for ease of recording, I'll be playing the Xbox 360 port. This port is widely considered to be the inferior version of Sonic Adventure among all the options available, having the plasticky models of the DX version released on Gamecube, but without many of the additional features that came with it. We'll discuss the different versions of the game later on. For now, grab a Chaos Emerald, pet a Chao, and let's turn the page to Sonic Adventure. For Sonic's first 3D adventure, Sega took a rather ambitious path, giving us not one, not two, but a whopping 6 playable characters, each with their own unique playstyle and storyline to follow, the latter of which all interconnect into one overarching plot. When you first start the game, our only available character is Sonic, and here is where the adventure begins. The game opens up with our titular hero Sonic enjoying a night out on the town, jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Sonic notices some police cars rushing off, and thinking it might be something exciting, decides to follow. There, Sonic sees the police facing off against some strange creature made out of water. Though Sonic manages to fend off the monster, it escapes through a sewer drain. The next morning, Sonic meets up with his best pal Tails, who crashes his plane after attempting to use one of the 7 Chaos Emeralds as a power source. The two head to Tails' lab in the Mystic Ruins, where they run into Dr. Eggman. Eggman reveals the water monster Sonic encountered earlier is called Chaos, the god of destruction. Chaos is capable of absorbing Chaos Emeralds, changing forms and gaining a substantial boost in power with each emerald it consumes. Eggman wishes to acquire all 7 Chaos Emeralds to have Chaos achieve his perfect form, and use that power to take over the world. Obviously that's no good, so Sonic and Tails set out to gather the emeralds before Eggman does. One of these Chaos Emeralds finds its way to Amy Rose, being held within a pendant of a bird that bumps into her after a shopping trip. This bird is being hunted down by one of Eggman's robots, Zero. Deciding to protect the bird, Amy runs away with Zero giving chase. Amy is subsequently captured and imprisoned on Eggman's flying battleship, the Egg Carrier. While in a cell, Amy meets E-102 Gamma, one of the newest creations of Dr. Eggman's E-Series robots. Though initially loyal to Eggman, the robot starts to question his purpose after his encounter with Amy and the bird in her care. Finally, we have Knuckles the Echidna. For the uninitiated, Knuckles is the last of his species and the guardian of the Master Emerald, a large gem with the ability to neutralize the power of the Chaos Emeralds. Chaos was originally sealed within the Master Emerald, and upon his awakening, the Master Emerald is shattered and scattered across the world. Knuckles resolves to find all the missing shards and restore the Master Emerald. As each story progresses, the various characters' individual narratives will start to converge, as it becomes a race to put a stop to Eggman's villainous schemes and prevent Chaos from reaching his perfect form. Oh right, Big the cat. Big is a lazy cat that loves fishing with his buddy Froggy. When Froggy swallows a piece of Chaos and is captured by Gamma for Eggman, Big sets out to get his friend back. If it sounds like I'm glossing over Big's portion of the story, I am. He matters so little to the overall plot, and by little, I mean basically not at all. Honestly, Froggy plays more of a role than Big does. As you can no doubt tell, Sonic Adventure decided to have a much greater emphasis on storytelling, and for the first attempt, it's good. It's certainly more serious than one may expect for a talking blue hedgehog, but despite the high stakes and occasional moments of drama, Sonic Adventure keeps a good balance between serious storytelling and lighthearted Saturday morning cartoon shenanigans, which makes it approachable for all audiences. That's not to say it's not without issues. Despite having 6 playable characters, they don't all feel equally as relevant to the overarching plot of stopping Chaos. Characters like Amy and Gamma have a greater emphasis on their own personal character arcs, which feel disconnected from the main narrative. I really like Gamma's story. It becomes a surprisingly sad yet heartwarming tale that stands on its own merits as a short story. It just really doesn't have anything to do with chaos after about the halfway point. Then you have Big. Oh man, Big. Big the cat has so little bearing on anything. He's a dumb as rocks character who really couldn't care less about saving the world, he just wants his frog. Combined with his gameplay, or we'll get to that, you just have to wonder if he really needed to be included at all. Nevertheless, I enjoy the emphasis on story Sonic Adventure took. A common complaint I hear nowadays is that Sonic doesn't need to have a serious story, or even a story at all. He's a hedgehog that goes fast and fights an evil doctor, and that's all it needs to be. While maybe Sonic doesn't need to have a focus on story, I think people underestimate the impact a story can have on gameplay. Let's take one of the levels, Lost World. No, not that one. For example, Lost World has you traveling through an ancient temple, with Indiana Jones-style traps and strange structures scattered around it, all while the soundtrack is playing a slow, almost sad-sounding musical piece. On its own, this would just be a cool level with equally as cool aesthetics, but through the story, we're given the extra context that this stage is connected to the ancient civilization of Echidnas, Knuckles' ancestors, that were wiped out by chaos. Now the stage has a new meaning, giving the level a mysterious, almost mythical feeling, which makes me appreciate it all the more. Meanwhile, boss fights like Chaos 6, while a fun fight in and of itself, is elevated with the context that Chaos is now one emerald away from achieving its ultimate power, and it's up to Sonic to face it while on a crashing airship. It gives weight to the fight, and makes it feel more dramatic. The serious story adds to levels and boss fights, making them feel more important and grander than they would be otherwise, and for that reason, I'm glad Sonic Adventure chose to have such a big focus on storytelling. I also appreciate having 6 separate stories which all interconnect. I like that each character gets a different glimpse into the narrative, and by seeing more stories through other characters' perspectives, you get more pieces of a complete picture. Not to mention I always get a kick out of moments where the individual characters cross paths with each other. Sonic Adventure has a fun detail, where in cutscenes where multiple playable characters are together, the cutscenes have slightly different dialogue between each story.
Knuckles, don't tell me Eggman tricked you again!
Me? What about you?
Way to go, Knucklehead! Don't you realize when you've been tricked?
Tricked? No one makes a fool out of me!
Way to go, Knucklehead! Knuckles, did you let him trick you again?
Like you weren't?
Smooth move, Knucklehead!
It's a minor detail that really doesn't change a whole lot, but if you have to watch the same cutscene multiple times, changing around the dialogue keeps things a bit fresh so everything isn't exactly the same. But since we're on the topic of cutscenes, let's talk a bit more about the presentation, and I gotta say, these are really bad. Cutscenes mostly just have characters standing in static poses while talking, their faces contorting really unnaturally as they speak. And there are a lot of characters just walking in place. These cutscenes don't just look bad by today's standards, they were awful when they first released. Even in moments where they try to have a bit more movement, everything just looks awkward. Like, look at this scene where Eggman throws a Chaos Emerald at Chaos, that thing clearly misses him. It's terrible, plain and simple. The voice acting is fine. Most of the voices themselves fit the characters well, but you could tell a lot of these actors didn't have a whole lot of experience, leading to mixed delivery. I do want to give a shout out to Dr. Eggman's voice actor, the late Dean Bristow, who I think did an amazing job making Eggman sound truly menacing.
I will make you all pay for this.
Let's get out of here!
You fool. Away, before I make mincemeat out of you.
Ah, chills. Literal chills.
Though for every good line like that, there's also one like,
That's Eggman! I wonder what happened to Sonic.
so it all balances out. And to the shock of no one, the music of Sonic Adventure is stellar. The stages are also upbeat and energetic, which adds to the thrill rides these levels offer. Even on the occasional moments where the tracks go for something slower and more atmospheric, there's still something you can tap your foot to. The vocal tracks for the character themes and main theme are also all a joy to listen to, cheesy lyrics and all. While the music is great, the sound mixing is rather poor. During cutscenes, especially when the instrumental character themes were playing in the background, they were often a bit too loud, leading to the voice acting being drowned out by the music.
So what went wrong anyway? It's not like you to crash like that.
You're gonna have to speak up!
Yeah, it's just that I'm testing a new prototype power supply.
What?
And it's not fully compatible yet.
You can always borrow my plane. The Tornado.
This definitely could have used a once-over. Heading into gameplay, we have 6 distinct gameplay styles spread throughout our main cast. Let's start with the Blue Blur himself. Sonic stages offer a fantastic balance between high-speed movement and platforming. In the 2D games, while Sonic became popular for his signature speed and how quickly you could zip through stages, another significant part of the appeal is how open the stages were. Players were greeted with multiple pathways to navigate through a given level, and bonus rings and lives as a reward for exploring. Sonic Adventure does an excellent job translating this into the 3D plane. If you prefer to blast through a stage, trying to maintain your momentum and aiming for the best time, you can do so and have a fantastic experience. But at the same time, plenty of Sonic stages are very open, providing multiple paths for a player to take through a given stage, and rewarding them with extra rings and lives for going off the beaten path. This gives each stage a ton of replayability, as you can go through each stage multiple times to find new shortcuts and goodies. Sonic, and the rest of the cast for that matter, play like a dream. Moving Sonic feels buttery smooth, with his top speed, while fast, never causing me to feel like I was losing control of the character. Jumping I found had the perfect amount of weight to it, giving you good control without feeling too floaty. Regardless of whether a player is zooming through loop-de-loops or jumping across platforms, controlling a given character felt responsive and satisfying, making for a great experience going through a stage. Sonic is so much fun to play. The controls and level design complement each other perfectly, with each stage offering a variety of thrills I find you only ever get with Sonic games. Sonic Adventure has a great variety of stages here, each with a unique aesthetic and set pieces that set them apart, such as the snowboarding in Ice Cap or the whale chase in Emerald Coast. Of the 10 stages, the only dud I felt was Casinopolis. The gimmick here is that you are in an open casino, with an emerald just out of reach on a raised platform. To reach it, you need to collect rings from various pinball tables and deposit them. In doing so, the rings you deposit create a pile so you can climb up and reach the emerald. Fun idea, but playing what's ultimately a luck-based game like pinball instead of the usual platforming is a bit of a pace breaker. Thankfully, failing one of the boards brings the player to an underground section that offers a ton of rings, so that does ease the pain, but also kinda defeats the purpose of the level. The only real gripe I have with Sonic's overall gameplay is the camera. For the most part, Sonic Adventure's levels are open enough that the camera operates perfectly fine. But in narrow corridors or absolutely any part of Skydeck, it becomes a disaster, moving all over the place and quickly losing focus of the character. Seriously, why is the camera in Skydeck so terrible? Oh my god. Still, major problems with the camera were a rarity, but it's worth mentioning that when it gets bad, it's disorienting. Overall, Sonic's story can be completed in about 2 hours, which is admittedly a bit short. But its use of multiple paths and encouragement to go for shorter times makes them infinitely replayable, and the stages on offer here are fun enough to be worth the price of admission alone. But Sonic isn't our only playable character, so let's shift focus to Sonic's best friend, Tails. Tails plays through much the same stages as Sonic, and is capable of moving just as fast, but this time, Tails is able to make use of his ability of flight to access shortcuts and skip massive portions of the stage. This sounds like it would make Tails' stages easy, but skipping sections of the stage is actually the point. Unlike Sonic, Tails' levels have him racing against another character, usually Sonic, to the end of the stage. This system adds a kind of time limit to the stage, as the player needs to make quick decisions and proper use of Tails' flight to make it to the end of a level first. As a side note, I like that Sonic cheers Tails on whenever Tails takes the lead.
You made it! Alright, Tails!
It's a sweet bit of characterization that shows that the two are brothers that care for and support each other. I love it. This gameplay decision does unfortunately make Tails' overall story much shorter than Sonic's. Tails' levels have some sections missing that were a part of Sonic's, and since you're already using shortcuts to skip portions of the stage, each level doesn't last much longer than a handful of minutes. Include the fact that Tails only has 5 playable stages to Sonic's 10, and you'll be done his story in roughly an hour. Still, it's a pretty exhilarating hour. Tails' jump to 3D was well implemented, not limiting his ability to fly from the 2D games, but embracing it, and making a unique gameplay system around it. Whereas Tails' stages took what Sonic had and put a greater emphasis on speed, our next playable character, Knuckles, has a greater focus on exploration. As you may recall, Knuckles is looking for missing pieces of the Master Emerald, so it's up to us to play a little bit of hide and seek. Knuckles will be placed in an open stage, and needs to find 3 pieces of the Master Emerald scattered throughout it. To help him, Knuckles has a radar at the bottom of the screen, which will change color the closer you get to an emerald, essentially making Knuckles stages a large game of hot and cold. Just like in the 2D games, Knuckles is able to glide and climb up walls, giving a lot of freedom of movement for exploring a given stage. The difficulty of Knuckles' levels can be a bit random. The emerald pieces are not put in the same place each time you play a level. They can appear in a number of preset locations. As such, it's possible you can easily stumble upon shards and complete a level in around a minute, or they can be placed somewhere trickier and take a bit longer. Your mileage may vary as to whether you find Knuckles' levels fun or not. They're a rather significant departure from the fast-paced platforming of Sonic and Tails, but personally, I really like Knuckles' levels. It's neat getting to explore larger portions of the levels that Sonic and Tails couldn't reach, plus gliding around these big open areas gives such a sense of freedom. Knuckles' levels gets a thumbs up from me, but with how different it is, I can't blame anyone if they find it isn't their cup of tea. Amy Rose has more traditional level structures, with obstacles to navigate and a goal she needs to reach. However, Amy has nowhere near the levels of speed of Sonic, Tails, or even Knuckles, being the second slowest character in the entire cast. These levels have a bit more focus on platforming, making for a playstyle that's akin to more typical platformers. The gimmick here is that the robot Amy encountered earlier, Zero, will be constantly chasing you throughout the level, adding a sense of urgency as you progress. Really though, Zero rarely poses a threat. He moves slowly, takes a long time to attack, and can be momentarily stunned by a hammer to the face. I like the idea of a constant pursuer keeping the tension up, but Zero just isn't aggressive enough to add any kind of challenge. And playing as Amy herself just isn't all that fun. She moves too slow, and unlike Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, she can't destroy enemies by jumping into them. Instead, you have to use her hammer, but using her hammer felt awkward. I do like that if you use Amy's hammer while running, Amy will vault herself high in the air, and while in the air, she moves much faster than her standard run speed. So almost all of Amy's playthrough had me repeatedly launching myself upward just to keep a decent pace. Regardless of whether you like Amy's gameplay or not, you won't get to play it for very long. Amy only has 3 stages, 2 of which are not much longer than a standard Sonic level. I completed Amy's story in under 45 minutes, and compared to the 3 stories that came before it, I didn't have all that great a time. Not a bad time, mind you, but Amy's gameplay is the kind of playstyle that Sonic was always known to defy, and the one gimmick that tried to make it something special just doesn't add a whole lot. So we have one dud out of 4 different gameplay styles. That wouldn't be so bad if it was the only dud. Okay, here we go, let's talk about Big the Cat. When it comes to the other playable characters outside of Sonic, I found they've taken an aspect of Sonic's gameplay and given it a greater focus. For Tails it was speed, Knuckles it was exploration, and Amy was platforming. Big says to hell with that, time to go fishing. That's right, with Big, his friend Froggy is in a body of water somewhere in the level. As Big, you throw your lure into the water, wait for something to bite, and reel it in. The best point of comparison for Big is Sega Bass fishing. Once something bites on your lure, you want to press A to reel in the fish. However, the fish will fight back, and reeling while the fish is pulling away will raise your tension meter on the right side of the screen. If this meter reaches full, your line will snap and that will be considered a lost life. The key is to almost rhythmically pull in, let the rod go for a few seconds, reel in again, and repeat, keeping a proper pattern of reeling and easing back to have the tension meter decrease until you catch the fish or Froggy. Mechanically, there's nothing wrong with the fishing in Sonic Adventure. Everything works as intended, that's not the issue. The issue is that this fishing is such a huge departure from what people want from a Sonic game. There's no platforming, no racing to get the fastest time, there's no exploration, you're just sitting there, fishing. When I'm playing Sonic Adventure, I can't get through big stages fast enough, but fishing is a game about patience. You need to wait for Froggy to notice your lure and bite, but sometimes another fish bites instead. Catching other fish gives you points depending on their size, but unless you're playing the stage on a higher difficulty, you don't need any points to finish the level. All you need to do is catch Froggy. I was just frustrated because now I needed to waste my time trying to reel in this fish before I could get back to trying to catch Froggy. And speaking of Froggy, there's such a weird disconnect between story and gameplay. In the first level, you catch Froggy. Okay, great. Big's got his friend back, story over. But after you exit the level, the game acts as if you didn't catch Froggy at all, as you're now expected to move to the next level and catch Froggy again. They couldn't even come up with a good reason for why you don't have Froggy. Ugh, really, the problem with Big is that he feels like padding. He has little to no relevance in the story, and his gameplay is just too different from what people are buying Sonic for. Like I said, mechanically the fishing is fine. If this was just a side activity you could do for fun, like the bumper cars in Twinkle Park, I wouldn't be upset by it being here at all. In fact, I probably would have praised it. But the fact is, if you want to unlock the final story of Sonic Adventure, you have to play through Big's story to get it, and it's something I always dread whenever I want to replay Adventure. Thankfully, our last remaining character, Gamma, is a gameplay style I view in a much more positive light. Gamma's levels are best described as shooting galleries. You still need to move through obstacles and reach the end of a level, but as you move forward through a given stage, you can hold down the attack button to have Gamma lock onto multiple targets and open fire. Gamma stages have a time limit, and you can increase that time by shooting enemies, earning an even greater time bonus for shooting multiple targets at the same time. You wouldn't think shooting mechanics would work in a Sonic game. You really wouldn't. But the way it's executed here works. The time limit keeps the tension up so you don't just move forward and skip all the obstacles. Plus, it's pretty satisfying just unleashing hell on a stage with how many enemies are thrown the player's way. No matter which character story you decide to play, there is a bit of jank the player will need to deal with. Whether it's the aforementioned camera, stopping on a dime, or other small oddities, Sonic Adventure is not a game that is polished to a sheen. That said, these moments of jank were usually just small issues that rarely impacted the overall experience. Rarely.
No!
In between each level of a given story, the player is often placed in one of 3 different hub worlds to explore and talk to the various people. The people here offer small, sometimes humorous dialogue, which changes as you progress through the story. For example, as Sonic, I talked with one of the workers at the train station, who laments working so hard for so little pay. Then later you can find him and others out on strike for higher pay and better working conditions. Hell yeah, my brothers, fight for your self-worth. These details are small, but appreciated, making it feel like a living world with people going about their lives. Alongside these people, these hub worlds have hidden upgrades that grant Sonic and company new abilities or enhancements to their existing ones. And most importantly, these hub worlds offer the entrance into the Chao Garden. The Chao Garden is a small area where you can raise these adorable little creatures called Chao. By visiting them in between levels, you can give them animals collected from enemies to boost your Chao stats, and once you feel ready, you can enter your little guy into a race. This mode can be really addicting. It offers a nice break in between levels for you to relax and raise up your little buddy, and seeing your Chao learn how to walk, swim, or fly can be rewarding. A cool little detail too is that the Chao acquire characteristics from the particular animal you give them, allowing for a bunch of variations in how they can appear. The Chao Garden also encourages replaying past stages, as getting more rings can allow you to purchase items from the Chao Black Market, yes that's what it's called, such as more Chao of various colors, and special fruit which give big stat boosts. I spent 200 rings on that fruit, Peaches, you ate it! Overall, this is a great feature you can spend hours upon hours in alone, and if you find it's not your cup of tea, no worries, it's just an optional activity. To sum up what I find to be the appeal of Sonic Adventure in one word, it would be variety. With 6 playable characters and a multitude of side activities, there's always something new and different around the corner. To me, Sonic Adventure is like a carnival, colorful, fun, and with a wide selection of activities to participate. This can lead to Sonic Adventure feeling a bit unfocused, and not every activity will jive with everyone. Someone may want to play Sonic Adventure because they love Sonic's gameplay, but with the likes of Knuckles and Big being so different, it's very likely they may not resonate with them, and that's a sizable chunk of the game that they don't care for. So how much a player loves Sonic Adventure will just come down to how much of these varying gameplay styles click. And for me, outside of Big and parts of Amy, the gameplay clicked. Has Sonic Adventure shown its age? Oh my god, yes. The camera is a mess, the animations during cutscenes are horrendous, and jank permeates many parts of this game. But when I'm getting into the meat of it, racing through stages as Sonic or Tails, exploring as Knuckles, or causing mayhem as Gamma, I just cannot stop smiling. The world of Sonic Adventure is so vivid and creative. The story, while not perfect, is fun and memorable. The characters still control probably the best they ever have in a 3D game, and there's just so much to do outside of a character's given levels, whether it's playing with Chao, exploring the overworld, or playing various challenges to unlock all the emblems. Sonic Adventure is filled to burst with content. I can see the many faults it has. Sonic Adventure is far from a perfect game, but I also just feel happy while playing it, and I think that's one of the most important things a game can do. Sonic Adventure has a handful of versions to its name. Alongside the original Dreamcast version, an enhanced port of the game was made for Gamecube, titled Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut. This version added a handful of features, such as a mission mode, Game Boy connectivity for the Chao Garden, and some playable Game Gear games, which is pretty cool. DX also gave a shiny coat of paint to some of the existing character models. Emphasis on shiny. The models in the DX version look so much more plasticky, and honestly I view them as a bit of a downgrade to the Dreamcast models. The version I'm playing, the Xbox Live Arcade version, is a port of the DX version, but for some reason without the Game Gear titles included, though it does have reduced loading screens and a more consistent frame rate. Really, whatever version you should get comes down to what you prefer. The 360 version has less content but better performance. The Gamecube version has weird looking character models and lighting, but the most amount of features. And the Dreamcast version has the least content, but better models and lighting. So the choice is down to preference. Sonic Adventure is such a fun game. As Sonic's first full-fledged 3D experience, it certainly has some rough patches, and not everything has aged gracefully these past 20 plus years. And while I don't particularly care to play as the likes of Big or Amy, the majority of Sonic Adventure is a thrill ride that offers tons of unique gameplay moments and high-octane action that has me returning time and time again. Sonic Adventure will take the number 3 spot in our ranking. Brilliant levels, memorable music, and an enjoyable story held back by terrible visuals and not all the various features and forms of gameplay sticking the landing. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Next time, we'll be having a double feature, as our next title has versions released both on consoles and the Nintendo DS, and since I own both of them, we'll be taking a look at both. And let's just say, these games are more than meets the eye. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and may we see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.